Today we're going to be painting this guy. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, you need high temp heat paint, yada yada yada. Well, I've never had to use that, and just kind of show you here, this is what I've used. Rust-Oleum 2 times cover. Anyway, you're going to want something to use for prep, you're going to want something for cleanup, and you're going to want something to degrease the rifle. Also, you're going to need a brass brush to get into the tiny nooks and crannies that you don't want painted or you have that need to be cleaned out for crud. Also, you're going to want a screwdriver or a pair of pliers in order to get your rifle apart. Now, this goes without saying, if you're in an indoor area, you definitely want to make sure that you have proper ventilation, but you do want to be very sure that you have rubber gloves if you're using any sort of harsh chemical cleaner. For those of you who are unfamiliar in paint preparation, this stuff right here is good for scuffing up the metal or any previous finish. The red is a little bit harsher than this green stuff here, but either will do in this case. Obviously, we're not going to paint this with the furniture, so let's get to it. Let's get the furniture removed and let's get the rifle into its component form. Now, one of the really cool things about an Egyptian ACAM variant is if you are in the market for replicating the paint job and you don't paint very well, then you are in the right ballpark here. Unfortunately, it's going to be pretty hard to match this up, and I'll kind of show you how later on how to match this up to what it would normally be. Now, my only major concern is that I don't want to necessarily cover this area up with paint. However, I do want to remark with the electro pen this area right here to restore the original finish that would have been looking similar to this of the Egyptian writing. So I'm going to attempt to redo that, and then I'm going to copy that over here. Now, I am going to remove the fire selector. I'm not going to remove the axis pins. The reason why is because I want to make sure that the rifle is pretty close to what it would have looked like at the factory. Now, I am going to remove the trigger components, or at least the trigger itself, and then we should have a good baseline here. I am going to repaint the bolt carrier. At this point in time, I would recommend removing the bolt itself and set that aside. Gas tube, we are going to repaint on the rifle, and we're not going to repaint that, but we are going to repaint the dust cover. So once you got everything that you want to repaint in the area, then the next step is going to be clean off everything, make sure everything is properly degreased, and then take the Scotch-Brite pad, whether it's this one here, which this is the one I'm going to use in this case, or if it's the green one, whether you want a nicer, smoother finish, use it accordingly to what your finished desired result is going to be. All right, now I have removed the axis, all right, now I've taken the trigger group out of the receiver. I left a hammer in there just because I don't want to deal with that, and you know, it is what it is. Anyway, I backed out the axis pins just ever so slightly. The reason why is because I don't want a nice little ring of mist paint on these YXY dimples. Anyway, just kind of running down the side of the rifle. Everything looks good. I'm not going to be painting the muzzle brake. One thing we are going to be doing though is we are going to be stuffing a piece of paper towel in the tip and in the chamber. The reason why is we don't want to paint anything in there. We do want to paint the barrel. We want to make sure that that matches pretty good. You know, we want a nice even coating. We want to do a good job on the first coat. There are a few things we do want to do first. You know, cleaning rod, all we need to do is just spray a thin coat on that and we'll be good to go with that. We can paint the bolt carrier. All we need to do is scuff it a little bit, and then we'll be in business on that. And then we can set those two components aside. Once we've got the inside of the receiver painted, what I normally do is I take the dust cover and I set that aside. I paint the rest of the rifle, and then when the rifle is ready to be put back together, I put this back together, and then I give it the little speckly coat that these AKs usually have. The objective here is to knock off all the rust, if there is any, but when I'm using this Rust-Oleum, it tends to do a pretty good job there. I do like a virgin in the white bolt carrier, but that's not correct for the build. You know, but I'm not gonna rip on it too hard. I'm just knocking the high spots off, and then we're gonna hit it with the degreaser. And once we've got that out of the way, then we'll be good to go. I use carburetor cleaner because it dries pretty quick. You can see it's already glazing and getting gone. You can spray paint right over it, but I usually wipe it down with paper towel. So what I usually do is just take a paper towel and just wipe it off real quick, and that gets the heavy stuff that the spray didn't just knock off. This is an AK, so the paint finish isn't supposed to be perfect, especially since we are actually restoring the paint to better match what it would have been. Okay, now with this one, I want to preserve this marking here. There are a little bit of markings that are visible very, very faintly in the original paint on the trunnion here. Obviously, I'm going to have to go back over that with an electro pen in order to get that back to where it was. But let's get to it. Just knock the high spots off, just scuff it up a little bit. Now, I'm not going to paint the rear sight block as hard. I might dust it on accident, but that's not the objective. I just want to rough up what we got going on here. Get in the trigger guard here. And we got a little spot of something right there. The receiver was blued, so I'm not hitting it real hard. I'm just giving it something for this paint to adhere to. And, you know, obviously we'll want to paint the barrel as well. Now this will take off paint, this carb cleaner will take off paint, so if that happens, then we'll paint the areas that end up getting stripped. One thing that irritates me like there's no other is going to a car show and seeing in the corners of the trunks where people just spray painted over the dirt. We don't want that look on our rifle, so we want to make sure that we're getting all the crud out of where these rivets are. You can see my smiley face a little bit in there, not quite as good as I should have or would have wanted it. We might touch that up here in a little bit. And we want to get the crud as good as we can out of the nooks of the barrel. The threads of the barrel, we are gonna, after we paint this, we're gonna hit it with this brush again. And the only reason why is because I don't like having paint in there. Get in here on the sight. So this is a nice sunny day. It's about 78 degrees. Nice little breeze as well. Remember what I said, it's an AK. Paint finish doesn't have to be perfect. But since we're outside just kind of doing whatever, take into consideration what side you're going to be setting down when you do this. And it's going to be this side. So we're going to set that up there, let that dry. And in the sun, this is going to dry pretty well. It's going to dry pretty quick. Okay, before we start to paint the barrel, what we want to do is we want to keep the paint out of the barrel as best as we can. best way to do that without having little silicone plugs. I do have those, but we're not going to use them today. Best way is to take and wad up paper towels and actually just stuff them in the chamber and the barrel. So once you got that in place, we're ready to rock and roll. All right, let's get to painting. I'm not going to paint the rear sight block. I'm not going to focus on the rear sight block for paint, I should say. I don't want to paint the rear sight leaf, and I don't want to paint this here. Normally I would take the rear sight leaf out, but since I'm not going to be focusing on this real area real hard, I'm going to, I don't feel like I need to. So we're going to just kind of rock and roll with what we got. Axis pins are installed, but you don't have to have them in. I'm just doing this because it's going to be easier for me. Getting the underside of the rails. All right, now outside of the receiver, trigger guard. You want to try to not have runs if at all possible. At least at this point. Right now I don't want to spray the trunnion. If I get, or the rear sight block, if I get the rear sight, I got it. That's all right, we can get it with the brass brush. This is probably not the way they did it, but it's pretty darn close. The results are going to be pretty close to how Egypt did it. All right, so I had a mishap. I ended up grabbing the receiver with my hand, so yeah, I had to strip all the paint off of it. Anyway, the reason why we're doing this the way we're doing it is because we want to make sure that the coating is pretty similar, all right? Now, it's going to be pretty unorthodox the way we're going to do the rest of this here, but just kind of bear with me. Now with an Egyptian, having runs in the paint isn't going to be a deal breaker as far as the quality or the end result. It'll look pretty close. Oops, don't want to get that, there we go. All right, now I'm going to let this kind of tack up a little bit. I'm going to set it off to the side. Handling that is not going to be a big deal. Actually, you know what? Let's get that too there. Make sure we got that. Don't have to be perfect. It's Egyptian. All right, this here, dust cover. It has previously been painted. All I'm going to do is I'm going to just spray it over. If I hit it with brake cleaner, or carb cleaner, it'll strip this paint off. I don't really want to do that, so I'm just going to hit it with that, dust that off real quick, and then Now there is some writing on the back of this dust cover. I'm going to go back over that with an electro pen. We don't want to forget our selector. We've got a spot there on that side. Want to make sure we get that guy. And then we have this right here. Just kind of get that the way it looks there. All right, now once that dries, once all this stuff dries, we're gonna put it together. Now I'm gonna put it together tacky, and the reason why is because I want handling marks on the rifle. I would go the extra mile to have like some sort of dings or something on it, or like dust or dirt or whatever, but I'll just let nature kind of take its course on that. Egyptian AKs aren't the nicest looking AKs, so if somebody tries telling you that, go look up some Maddies from the 90s and you'll see what I'm talking about. Anyway, let's give this about a minute or two, let it tack up, and then we'll get back to it. All right, I'm going to start with the bolt carrier here. I have the Scotch-Brite pad. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the paint off of the piston here, so the piston looks pretty good. And there we go. Now it looks right. Now you can see how shiny the paint is. Egyptian AKs, that's kind of a no-go on that. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually take and just drag this Scotch-Brite pad over the paint finish. Now you can see the paint shiny on that side. It's kind of dull on that side. We want to kind of just hit it just weird. We don't want to make this thing look like it's pristine and perfect, okay? If we take some off, that's no big deal. That looks okay. Now let's look at the barreled action. Paint looks okay. Got some runs, some beautiful runs on it right in here. Paint's a little tacky. That's about perfect. That's about what we want. Just any sort of which way. Let's see here. And then we're going to do it on the other side too. Now let's put the dust cover on and complete the ensemble. I would say let's drop the rifle and make it, you know, give it some real good wear. Get on the other side of me. Doesn't need to be perfect, but Egyptian AKs typically had like really crappy handling wear and everything, and you just want to make sure that it looks the part, okay? Now, since this rifle, all right, we want to get some handprints on it. Now keep in mind, this is just coat one, all right? We want to make sure that there's a little bit. Now let's scrape some paint off of here. Let's do that number there. Let's get some paint off of here. Sight block or gas block, let's get some paint off of that. Barrel, let's do some dings there. Receiver, let's get some dings all over the place. Just you want to really get some good stuff there. Okay, all right, now we've got that. We got some handprints. Now, what I'm gonna do, let's not forget this. This is the most, whatever that's good, that's good. It's the most important part here, the fire selector. Let's get some paint off of that right there. There we go. Now, that was coat 1. Coat number 2. This is gonna be the, oh, we re-arsenaled it coat, all right? But here's the thing, we're just gonna dust it kind of like that, just kind of. And we're not even gonna let it dry. We're just gonna. Well, we are gonna let it dry, but it's not gonna be. All right. Nope, that was a little too heavy. All right, now, this is where it's gonna really be interesting. I'm going to let this kind of dry and kind of set up a little bit. And I'm gonna tie it to a rope and I'm gonna drag it around a bit and get some drag marks and some, just some really interesting scuff marks on this. So that's gonna be our next stop. Okay, so we wanna be strategic. We wanna find the right kind of gravel. We don't want too big a gravel. We don't want too small a gravel. We want to find the perfect spot, okay? So just kind of look around and see where the perfect gravel is, right? Like you see this spot here isn't perfect. This spot here might be a little perfect. You know what? Let's just see what we get. All right, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna drag her. The reason why, we're going to keep the muzzle out of everything. I'm not like dragging it like super hard. Yeah, we're getting something there. We're getting something. So now we're going to drag it on the other side. All right, now I got a pile of wood chips over here. Let's drag it through that too. All right, the finish on your rifle is going to end up looking really cool. You know, once all this is said and done, you're going to have a pretty unique rifle. Obviously, you know, you might not want to do this to your gun. And yeah, this is a bit extreme. And you know, I'm trying to get a certain type of wear, you know. I want this gun to look like it's been places, and pretty much the only way to really do that is to give it some use. And since I don't have time for it to be used, and I want it to look used now, we're doing it this way. So anyway, guys, now let's look at the paint job here now. That's probably gonna look pretty close to the Egyptian I got now. And yeah, that's gonna look pretty good. I like how the receiver's coming out. The barrel probably needs a little bit more. Let's get up here and scratch the heck out of that. Because here's the thing, that furniture looks pretty beat up. And if I'm being completely honest with myself, that it wouldn't do any justice putting that furniture on a brand new looking rifle. And I don't know, I like how this is turning out. Now, obviously you guys are like, oh my goodness, oh my weak disposition, you know, but here you go. You see the results. The rifle is gonna be beautiful when it's put back together. The only thing I have to do now is scribble in the Arabic that would have been there, and if you look real close you can kind of see. Let's get some wear in there too. Obviously not all of people are going to have access to this, like a pile of wood chips, but If the gravel ain't gonna cut it, then use alternative means. Now you see why I did this when the parts were tacky. You know, you ended up with a uniform result. You know, I used semi-gloss. The reason why I did, or I used a glossy paint, and the reason why I did that is because the Egyptians were typically a glossy looking paint that dulled obviously after a little bit of use. Anyway guys, if you got any questions or comments, or you want to see the Egyptian build video, I am editing in the live portions as we speak, and we should have them up here within the next couple of weeks. We'll start to have them back up. If you want to be part of the live experience of building, consider donating $1 or more a month on patreon.com/ZekeShoots. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.